Welcome to the podcast, everybody. This is going to be a little bit different off-subject podcast. This podcast, I'm interviewing one of my older friends. His name is Scott Homan. He's a filmmaker, an engineer, an ex-Jehovah's Witness. He has an interesting project that we were talking about in this podcast. It's about a music scene in Vietnam. He spent some time in Vietnam, and there was a really interesting documentary that he made and that he asked my opinion on a few months back. And I thought it was a great take on the music scene in Vietnam, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome to the podcast, everyone. I have a guest with me. This is a little bit off topic, what we're usually doing. We usually talk about weddings, but Scott has a little bit of wedding experience, but I'd like to welcome to the podcast Scott Homan.
Hi there. How's it going?
Really good. So Scott and I have a little bit of history with each other. We've known each other probably about, I'd say, 20 years, man? 25 years?
Oh, yeah, probably 25 years.
25 years. It's a long time to know somebody. Going way back to middle school. The reason why I'm bringing Scott on the podcast is he's a filmmaker based out of Colorado. He's working on a couple projects that I've followed a little bit. He's asked me to look at one project in particular.
Yeah, that's the Knock Underground. It's a music documentary, kind of a music anthology about underground music in Hanoi, Vietnam.
In Vietnam, yes, I got that right in my opening. So let's start off with that. How did you end up getting to Vietnam? What made you, what made you think, hey, Vietnam's a great place I want to spend a majority of my adult life at?
That's fun. There's a lot of ways I could answer that, but one way is I always wanted to live abroad, and I did live abroad for a little bit in Ecuador, but then I came back to the States shortly after, so I had this idea that I discovered that teaching English is a way to live in another country and make decent money, and all you have to be is a native speaker without any qualifications. So I came across a friend. She's from Paris, but she was living in Colorado, and her dad was helping start a school in Vietnam, and it just turned out that she just bailed on her dad's school as one of the native teachers there and asked if I wanted to take the place because she knew I was interested. And I just said yes and had a Skype meeting, and 2 weeks later I was in Hanoi, Vietnam. It happened that fast. But I wanted to do it for a long time.
That's always something that I've admired about you. You were so in the moment, like spontaneous. Even back when we were in high school, it's just like, hey, let's ditch class and go snowboarding for the day. And I think I took you up on that, I don't know, a couple times. But yeah, man, that's just one thing that I could never grasp was like, he's got such freedom that I just don't have, and it's just obviously personality trait of yours that I don't have, that I always admired through middle school and high school.
Well, you came along for the ride, so that's what counts. It was fun.
Yeah. Yeah, so like I said...
Yeah,
go ahead.
Oh, just that trip, that snowboarding day was hilarious. It was like 2 feet of snow up in the... What are those hills called outside of Anago?
Oh, it was Eland, right?
Yeah, out in Eland. We're snowshoeing and like hiking through like waist-deep powder to go for like a 20-second ride. Maybe 1 minute.
I think I complained.
45 minutes to get to the top.
I think I complained the entire time too. It was like, man, we got to walk all
so.
the way up there. There's so many trees. You and Steve, I remember. And, oh man, that was just something. So that was fun. That was fun. We were in the same class. Oh, we were in multiple same classes, but this one class that I credit to everything that I've been doing as of late, the last 5 years, is media productions. Just being in that class, having access to cameras, editing. It wasn't even non-linear back then. It was just tape to tape. Higher quality cameras that, a 16, 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid wouldn't be able to afford back then. I mean, now everyone's got a high quality camera in their pocket, but, VHS, mini DV, it was great that our high school had access to all that and let a bunch of kids walk around doing it.
Yeah, it was incredible for the time. I definitely attribute that class to a lot of why I'm still doing film and camera work. And I eventually went to school for photography. It was a really fun experiment, and I think we talked about it this summer a bit, about how, with some of the other crew from back in high school, about how it was inspiring to be given so much freedom back then.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of said it. That was an interesting way we reconnected this summer. I had some help on, I needed some help on some wedding films that I was doing back in June, and I happened to see that you posted something on Facebook saying, "Hey, I'm back in Wisconsin for a couple weeks. Does anybody want to hang out?" And I was just like, "Yeah, you want to help me film some weddings?" Because I knew you were still, doing some filming work with your project, the XJW project, and I didn't know about the music doc until we actually reconnected this past summer. So I think that was I don't know, I had a great time doing it. After
I mean, that was a hilarious message to get, because I definitely am not a wedding filmmaker at all.
No.
But I can operate a camera.
Yeah.
I'm a camera operator.
I knew that.
I was like,
yeah.
Really? You want? I haven't seen this guy in years, and he wants to shoot a wedding together? Well, that's pretty interesting. Offer, I'll take it.
Yeah, and I was kind of like, I don't know, 80% joking. Like, he's probably not going to want to go and do this. So, a wedding day is like, that's like going to be 12 hours plus, and that's a hard day, and especially if you're not used to doing it. And that's always going to sit with me when you showed up that morning and we're just standing outside getting gear ready, and you were so nervous, like, man, it's just a wedding, no big deal. And you're like trying to like step through the day. I could see like how you were thinking about it, and I finally just like, I didn't know. I'm like, here, just take this and balance it. It was my gimbal, and I'm like, this should keep him busy for like 10-15 minutes, and you had it balanced in 5 minutes. I was like putting together the other cameras. I looked, I'm like, oh man, he's got that balanced already? That was supposed to keep him busy for like 20 minutes. Because I could just see like the stress on your face. It was so funny.
I was definitely out of my element at a wedding. I haven't even attended a wedding in a really long time, let alone filmed one and been a professional at one. So
and then
there was a moment in the wedding.
Yeah.
You're like, film the wedding party. And I was like, okay, anyone wearing nice clothes? And you're like, dude, turn the camera off. Like, that's not the wedding party. I'm like, explain me what a wedding party is. I don't speak wedding.
Yeah, and then when we were filming the first dances, and you're like, does everybody dance with the bride? Like, no, it's just usually the. Yeah,
I still don't know the answers to all these questions.
That's awesome. Yeah, that explains. Saying that I kid a lot, but a wedding is a pretty complicated day, especially if you're used to a managed set. I don't know exactly what you've worked in, environments you've worked on. We kind of talked a little bit about it, but compare that wedding day to maybe one of the most stressful times you've had on a set or working on a doc or anything like that.
So most of my experience has been with real small crews of maybe, I'm a DIY single person film guy or photographer, and there's other single person people that I've met over the years living in Vietnam and here as well in Colorado. And we got together and did some like 3 to 4 person crew, even 5-person crew jobs, with the craziest one being 48-hour film project, where that's just no one's ever worked together. Almost no one in the crew's made a film ever, but you're still doing it somehow, throwing it together. And I think having a good leader, person in charge is important. Where I've been the director in charge, and there's been creative leads on set for music videos. I've been that person. Other people, I've done that with a couple other people as a collaborative thing. But I would say the wedding is kind of, it's good it was good for me because was basically I was just a camera operator. I was just a camera operator, and I was told what needed to be captured. And basically I'm a B camera operator. So I would say that the wedding day, although it's long, I've had longer, or I've had just many film days that were just as long. But knowing that, I'm not the only shot, and that I can do the one thing I know how to do very well, was actually really relaxing once I got into the flow.
Yeah.
But yeah, showing up.
It's organized chaos. That's the best way I can sum it up. But shoot anything and everything. There's no structure. There's no shot sheet. There's no call time. There's just best I can describe is organized chaos.
Yeah, and I mean you know what you're doing, and so being able to say, hey, what about this? What are we doing for the next half an hour? What are we doing for the next hour was good. It made it flow really well.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, that other day we filmed with, or both those days we filmed with Jesse, and next day with Ben, and also so cool to reconnect with buddies from high school and hometown buddies.
Those guys were in the same class as us too. I'm not sure if Jesse was in the same year you and I were, because you and I were.
Yeah, I think he was behind.
Yeah,
a year behind us. Like
we were seniors when we started, right?
Were we? Was it just the 1 year?
Yeah,
definitely.
That's the only
class.
Yeah, that's the only disappointing thing about that is I wish I would have took it a lot earlier in high school.
Every year.
Yeah, every year.
Me too.
I mean, it had everything,
Yeah.
Except for the structure was really, really low, but yeah. I mean, if I could go back now, knowing what I know now.
Yeah, I would have done that totally different if I knew what I was going to be doing with the rest of my life and be passionate about.
Yeah.
Bugney, as our teacher, was a really interesting guy. He was so into what we were doing, and he somehow had great budgets for all this equipment.
Yeah, how did he get all that money?
Taught us how to use it. Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, it was the 90s after all.
Yeah.
Markets were booming, but he didn't really tell us we had to do anything. And there was nothing cool. There were no cool examples. Maybe we created some cool examples for the next years, but.
Well, we started the yearbook, the video yearbook. Remember that?
That's right. Yeah.
I didn't have as much.
I'd love to rewatch some of that stuff.
What's that?
I'd love to rewatch some of that stuff. It's cool that we've got Ben on the inside. He can get us.
Yeah, he's actually got a digital copy of it somewhere. I can get that. But anyway, so. What's your workflow like? Meaning to ask about the doc. What was your workflow like for shooting it, for pre-production, in production, and post-production?
For the music documentary?
Yeah. What did you follow? I mean, okay. I've always been interested in shooting something like that, something long format. I mean, I've shot weddings. That's long format, but all my other experience has been commercial work. That's all short format.
Yeah.
Not really a structured set or anything.
I just had this idea. Well, first of all, I was friends with the people that started the music venue years before they ever started the music venue. So to have a bunch of friends doing this really creative music venue space with this really strict adherence to original live music, no DJs, no cover bands, and they would bring in tours, organize tours for bands internationally and in the region. That was so cool to have access to all these people, and in a way, I'm not going to take credit for it, but the owner of the venue kind of gives us some credit in the doc for sort of helping jumpstart the whole idea of running a venue, because they just wanted to make a recording space.
Yeah.
But they told me they'd rented the space to record an album, and then they let me hear a couple of the demo tracks that they had done before they recorded, and I said, hey, let me hear it. Like, I want to make a music video with you guys. I love your music. And I heard the song and I was like, yes, let's do it. Where can we do it? And they're like, how about in the space we just rented? So we just threw together this idea, and another filmmaker, a friend of mine, he's more of kind of novice, but he's really into it. He's really good, like real natural at it. We were traveling in Southeast Asia making short films already for like 2 months about rock climbing and other adventure sports.
I remember seeing that rock climbing video you did. I liked it with all the natural sound. That was great. Do you have that?
Cool, yeah.
Do you have that linked anywhere? I'd like to include that in the show notes.
Yeah, that's online. That's on. We have a little YouTube channel called The Stack Media.
Yeah, send that over. Send that over to me. I'll put that in this episode when we're finished.
The title of that one is Dan's Dino, I think. And then there's another video on there if you search Highline in Laos. They're both in the same valley in Laos at a place called Green Climbers Home. Beautiful place, gorgeous. If you're into rock climbing, it's paradise, and it's so cheap. Like, you could stay there for less than $500 for a month.
Wow.
With meals, drinks, place to sleep, and all the best rock climbing in the world. It's an incredible spot.
That kind of sparks an interesting question, and you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. But how much did you make on a weekly basis living over there? Because I know the currency is a whole lot different. Exchange rate is different. So, I mean, if you feel comfortable sharing that, if not, don't worry about it. But
So just if anybody wants to go teach English abroad, Vietnam's a really good spot. They'd pay between $20 and $25 starting.
An hour?
For people with like little experience, per hour.
Wow.
And you can get daytime jobs. Most people, the easiest thing to get is an evening job for like 2 to 3 hours, and you can get that all week long. And weekends are always on offer because people don't have work and don't have school. So picking up weekends some people just work 2 days a week on the weekends and then don't work for 5 days. And making that kind of money there, like rent's $200 a month on average, and in a share space. But you can get your own spot for like $500, anywhere you want in the city, basically, and you can even rent an entire house sometimes for $500.
So you're making
living costs are so low, it's crazy.
So you're making $50 a day, working 2 hours a day, and pretty much doing whatever else you want.
The average meal is like $5 at a restaurant.
That's pretty cool.
It's incredibly cheap. Yeah. And then if you want to get, like, if you're doing film work, which I got into there, I kind of like bought a camera and went there with this idea. I taught English and I also did this. And eventually, I was charging $200 to $500 a day for shoots for whatever, event shoots or commercial type stuff, or just being a second camera. And then, so supplementing, making a couple $1,000s a month with 4 days of work, on a good month. That's like, I was saving money working like 10 hours a week.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's the crazy thing.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So,
and anyone can do it, and a lot of people are. It's just kind of like
not anybody.
A bigger population.
You have to know how to spell. You have to know how to spell and use English correctly yourself, which I don't.
And that. And those numbers are kind of on the low end. So I was teaching with kids. I really liked working with 6 to 12-year-olds. That's like a demographic and a job choice. But that's more like game design. So they have a real teacher who teaches them grammar. And when I show up as a native speaker, I would do.
So what you did was
that grammar.
You taught them like everyday use, kind of, sort of.
Yeah, exactly. I got them to play with the language rather than look at a book.
Yeah, kind of like
up, jumping, singing songs, like doing it like a challenge with the language.
Yeah,
so they have to like run around the room, and they get a lot of fun with it. Whereas a lot of people will go with the other more academic route and teach in college, or high school level or college level, and then you can make a lot more money doing that, or business level English. Huh. So people can make like $30 to $50 an hour teaching that level in Vietnam.
It's pretty interesting.
And then China and Japan pay a lot more. 60 to 80 for like business English.
But their cost of living is a little higher than I would guess.
It is higher, yeah. The economy in China has been booming forever, so for like 20 years. So they have money to spend, but things do cost a bit more.
So,
yeah.
You
You
got
asked me about the
into
music doc. I never really answered your question.
yeah, that's what I was trying to steer it back to.
Okay.
Um,
Um,
so we were on the workflow of your pre and post production.
okay, yeah.
Go ahead.
So having access to all those people as like good friends of mine who I played music with or, went out regularly to drink with and hung out at their venue all the time. We were the point people, me and a couple other musicians, to make music videos because kind of we helped them start the place and started making music videos there. So we made another music video for this other Vietnamese band. It was sort of the singer of that band. It was his idea, and that's the one you'll see. It's called Không Làm Gì. It means I do nothing or do nothing, and it's kind of like a teenage angst song about doing nothing and disobeying authority. It's like real pop indie. It's kind of a funny song and a funny video. So I directed that and with our crew. We call ourselves Banana Island TV, named after the English name for an island in the city, in the river.
Do you have any rights to that song?
No, they own all the rights to the song. They paid us just cash. We gave them a discount because we were hoping to get more, which
nice.
didn't happen. It might one day, but probably not. But they're all cool guys, and they're young, and I think their career is really on the rise. And they have a real cool sound, and they're really professional, and they're kind of influenced by Radiohead and other big like indie and American bands and Western bands.
Nice.
But yeah, so that was just a great access to all the best musicians in the city, and from that perspective of live music and original songs. But it was really just we wanted to make music videos, 3-minute, 4-minute videos, and that was it. And hoped to one day make money at it. And then time went by, and we started making like live music videos where we'd like get a couple cameras during a live show, and get good sound from the board from the guy who runs the venue and does the sound, and that was cool to do some of that stuff. And then
yeah, I had all kinds of
year
questions when you showed me the cut we watched that one night, like how you got all the audio and everything like that, and it did sound really good from all the live shots.
Thanks, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, so surprisingly, the Sony A7 series cameras have pretty good sound preamps in them that I would say are real similar to like the Zoom H4n that was like famous for budget DIY filmmaking. So I have the H5n I use, which I love. I'm using it right now. But I took a lot of the audio from the camera. I just cranked down so that the levels were not spiking, peaking, and the camera picked up decent sound. So quite a bit of what you see in the doc is actually just from the camera sound.
All on camera preamp. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then there's some GoPro footage. So I met this Russian guy, Sergey. He's a super cool guy. Really like him. He's a software engineer in Hanoi. And he just started organizing metal and heavy music shows, punk rock and stuff. And he started helping bands tour from the region because he's just so into the scene. He was like reaching out to bands. And he would bring a GoPro and film with his hand, just holding it in the air, parts of songs and whole sets. So when I told him I was making this doc, he's like, "Oh, that's so cool. Can I come help you?" And of course, I was saying yes. I would love your help. So him and I we pulled 2 straight overnighters at this cafe and Food Street. It's like this all night long food and bars area in Hanoi, and just with all these teenagers and college kids around working on their homework, we were. And drinking and smoking. We were up there pulling an all-nighter, putting together some of his GoPro footage and putting into the doc. So that's where I got a lot of that GoPro footage. It's lower quality, of course, but it adds a lot.
I couldn't really tell if you mixed it in to the cut that I saw. I really couldn't. I mean, there was parts that I could tell because it was a little extra shaky, but as far as the quality, though, when it was processed, it wasn't super bad.
Yeah, it's very, very usable. I would say it's as good as anything we had in high school with our VHS and mini DV cameras for low light.
It was noisy. Yeah, it was noisy. I'll give you that.
Yeah. GoPro definitely has some 1990s quality footage when it comes to low light.
Yeah. So
I guess
I
want to reframe something though. So this whole film idea, I just had this idea. Okay, I've got these 5 music videos that we did at the venue for different artists and projects, and we got all this GoPro footage, and I'm friends with all these people, and they would totally work on this with me because it's ideally would help promote their venue and their business, and get people to come to shows. That was like a goal. Mostly, I just did it for the scene, like the love of the scene there, because the music scene is really interesting there. Everyone's so passionate about music, and they're from all over the world. Really, it's a really international city. And I told the guys at Rec Room, the venue, and I said, hey, I got this idea. I want you to tell me what night you have no shows booked. That's going to be a slow night for you or a dead night, and I want you to book a screening of a 1-year like anthology film night where we highlight the whole last year of bands and shows and kind of give the best of for the first year of the venue. And they're like, are you sure? Like, I'm like, yeah, it doesn't exist at all, but I'm going to put it together and I'm going to need to interview everyone this week. And they're like, oh, how about in 10 days? There's a Sunday that's free. So I said, okay, book it and let's advertise them. And they made a really cool ad for it and posted all over social media. I was like, okay, challenge is on. So then I set up to interview.
Nothing like a little pressure to make it go a little bit quicker.
Yeah. And actually, it's kind of a funny thing because at that time I was like, okay, I'm going back to Colorado. I was planning to move out of the country back to Colorado, and I also wanted to do a couple things. This guy from Colombia, he's a buddy of mine, and he's running like a film workshop, and I really wanted to pay him $300 to like learn his whole system. And it's like a workshop he'd been doing for years in different countries, and he was doing it now in Vietnam. And 48-hour film project was on this weekend. And I was like, oh, I have to pay a couple $100, organize a team, and then make a film that's completely pointless, and spend 43 full days not sleeping to make it happen. And it's a lot of pressure and a lot of work. It's ridiculous.
So the film project, is that in Colorado or was that in Illinois?
This is all in Hanoi.
Oh, it was in, okay.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, both of these things cost money, and I'm not sure what I'm going to get out of them. And I have this whole idea in my head. I want to make something that means something to me, and I've already done half the work. So I should just not pay these people money and not spend a weekend learning from someone else or working my butt off to do it. And I'm going to spend the same amount of time working on something personal. I bet I can do it. Instead of 3 days, I got 10 days to do it. So,
that's a great analogy. That's that's good.
And so I interviewed everyone during the week. I went to a show, and there were like 3 of the people that run the venue were there. And then another day I went there and filmed the daytime with him, the bartender, and the guy that was more in charge of like the design of the place. And then the Japanese guy who runs First and Last Records, Koremoto, we caught him at another kind of cafe during the day, and we didn't even know we were supposed to be interviewing. He didn't realize that what I wanted to do until he got there. So I sprung it on him, and he's like, no, I'm not doing it. And I'm like, come on, answer 5 questions, and then you're done.
That explains his explicit motions in the video.
Yeah.
I meant to always ask you about that when you showed it. I'm like, it doesn't resonate to me. There's got to be a story behind it.
Yeah, he's just a funny guy. He swears, and I actually cut it back to just 1 surprise in the film instead of like 2 or 3. But yeah, so my final cut, I don't think you've quite seen the very last one, but it's like 2% of changes really. And I highlight one more Hanoian band I like. Morning Waits. They're cool.
So yeah, speaking of the final cut, what do you use to edit really with?
So I started off back in the day with Final Cut Pro, and I tried Premiere, and I sort of settled on Premiere because Final Cut didn't seem like it was getting as much support, and everyone else I knew was using Premiere, so I just sort of made a decision to just switch to it. So I've been using that for like almost 4 years now.
That's awesome.
And I would totally change if something came along, and I've been looking at DaVinci Resolve because their package looks really cool, and it's cheaper, and Adobe disables support for older equipment. Like if your computer's 3 years old, like it doesn't work anymore for their software,
Yeah.
which drives
Not
me
only
crazy.
not only are you renting your software, it's that they're dropping support for hardware. And it
Yeah.
just makes it hard for people like us that don't have an unlimited budget to
Mm-hmm.
just stay competitive, or not even competitive, but
Yeah.
just stay being able to do what we love.
Mm-hmm.
I stick with
It's definitely
Final Cut
an
Pro.
ongoing issue.
Yeah. I stick with Final Cut Pro because
Yeah.
I use an Apple machine, and it's $300. It's always being updated. Yeah, they don't update it as much, but you should take a look at it again. I mean, they've added so much to their color. You can add LUTs now natively. It's just so much nicer.
I kind of wish that Adobe was not doing the subscription thing. Like if they would do
Yeah.
big updates once every year or two,
I'd gladly
would just wait
pay
a couple years and buy it
$1,000
again.
for software than $50 every
Yeah.
month.
Because I mean, I was using Adobe 15 and it was working perfectly fine. And as soon as I paid them the $300 to like actually pay the software properly, my computer stopped functioning with the software. Like it didn't work with newer or older equipment, and it drove me crazy. I had to buy an entirely different desktop computer, and I still feel like with I have an 8-core 16-thread Ryzen 7 like newest processor with a pretty decent graphics card and all SSDs, like NVMe 2 on motherboard, terabyte SSD drive, and a bunch of SATA drives.
It's
And
still
it
laggy
still
or what?
lags and
Wow.
still drops frames. Like, what else is there? I have the latest stuff, and I every single time I use Adobe, it crashes. So I'm not a big salesperson for Adobe, but it's what I know, and I'm really like good at the workflow with it. So I just wish they'd stop changing things. It's really annoying. Although I have to give them credit, there's a couple features that I've been really liking. Like the titling is way better than it used to be. So that's nice.
Their
'cause I was-
color is pretty good too, from what I've heard.
yeah.
I've only touched
Yeah,
the program a
usually-
couple times.
Oh, and the thing you taught me this summer when we were in that hotel,
Oh,
for
the
the wedding.
LUT thing, yeah.
the
yeah.
LUTs. Oh my God, that changes everything. Because it allows me to use. What's funny though, like you said, it should be built into Adobe Premiere. But
Why isn't
basically
it?
It's
Yeah.
it's a trick. Yeah, right. It's the simplest thing in the world. It's like a 3-palette selector, so whites, grays, and blacks, and then boom, color pops, adjust contrast, and you're done.
Yeah.
That,
So
you have
so
to
what
open up
Scott
an entirely different piece of software for it. It's Adobe Photoshop. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
So what
But it works
what Scott really is talking about is you grab a still from your video, you export that still to Photoshop, bring it into Photoshop. You can adjust
Add a layer.
add a layer, adjustment layer. You can adjust your blacks, whites, bring up the color a little bit. You can even put a little bit of a grading on it, and then you just export a lookup table, which works basically native with Premiere. It also works natively with Final Cut Pro. But also, what I found out after I showed you that, I came home and I was doing it, and Final Cut Pro updated, and now it doesn't work anymore. And I'm so unhappy about that, because I understand Photoshop. I understand how to change color in Photoshop. And it's just so easy. You just click a couple things, and it makes it look so much better. And you can pop it in an adjustment layer in your editor, and everything works. But I mean, that leads me to my next question: is on such a huge project like your the Rec Room doc, how do you stay organized? Because I was looking at your timeline when we were going through, and I was showing you how to do those LUTs, and it just looked like a mess to me. I was just like, oh man, how do you know what you're looking at? And since then, I've kind of learned that you can nest things inside of Premiere. You can do the same thing kind of in Final Cut Pro too, with a compound clip, but in Premiere, it just looked completely different. It looked like you had multiple timelines up, and you were working on like 2 different timelines at the same time, and I was just like, oh, I can't, this is too much for me. I just want to cut and go.
I would say I'm not you know, super strict about my timeline organization, and people often have that same experience when they see my timelines because it looks scattered. But what I'm doing is like let's say V1 and audio 1, it's like the very first baseline for audio and video. I'll put something on top of V1 in the V2 spot, and then I won't like it, and I'll just try something else later. Like, oh, what if I just move this, shift this over? So I'll put up onto V3 and then shift it over top of the V2. And then that just keeps on happening throughout the film until I've got like, I don't know, 9. Like that film has about 9 videos and about 11 audio tracks.
Different layers.
And they're just all layers.
Wow.
But if I was to go consolidate it, it would probably end up being like 4 for each.
Yeah.
I'm playing a lot of games with the audio though, because I am working with some camera audio. So I'll take like a left and right from my camera audio, and I'll turn it into 2 lefts and 2 rights, and then apply a different master EQ to each to like make the sound more full. Or I'll do like the audio dialogue. I'll do, you know, I've got a lapel mic, a shotgun mic. So let's say I did a proper interview, lapel and a shotgun, and I want to have music in the background. So I'll keep those 2 nice microphone tracks and mix them so they sound good. Like just like do volume levels only, and then I'll add a music behind in the background. This is a really cool trick that makes a huge difference. You just take a EQ and you just pull down the center of the wave.
Oh yeah.
And it makes like a pocket for the voice of the person to sit on top of the music.
Yep.
The music gets all tinny and like empty sounding, but it's in the background. It sounds like a stereo in the next room or something.
Yeah, that I've recently learned how to do that too with Final Cut Pro, and it takes like a muddy sounding vocal track, and it's like a frequency adjustment. You can find the male frequency, which is like 500 to 1,000 or something like that, and if it's a male speaker, you just pull that frequency down, and it really smooths out the music, and you can hear them come through so much better. It's it really adds to the audio quality.
One of the first music videos I was into doing live performance, like just live capture. So the band's playing and there's a couple cameras running, handheld cameras, so that there's a little bit of camera shake, adds some energy to the song. And I hired this guy he's actually like a top DJ in Vietnam. He's a really cool guy, but he had this mixing board, and I just trusted him to like know what he was doing. I hired him to record all the audio, and he got with the sound guy, and they put all, you know, the vocals, there was 2 or 3 different vocal mics, and there was a mic to a banjo and a mic to another instrument and one single drum mic, I think. And he's mixing that all down. I was like, great, that's going to be so nice to have quality audio. It's the most important thing. And somewhere through the thing, because I had him also running a second camera, mistake, somehow the main vocals for the half of the band's set, this is their last show, the vocals were pulled.
Oh no.
They weren't on any of the tracks. I could have just taken a room mix. It would have been better than having every one of those tracks, but not the vocals. So it kind of ruined the entire project, which was terrible. But I got one of the guys in the band to help me out, and he taught me this like multi-tracking, like whatever microphone you have, and like doing separate mixes on them. And you could even take like one track and make it into 4 tracks and do 2 lefts and 2 rights with different EQs on them to make the sound really full. Wow. And even like offset the guitar by like, you know, a couple of milliseconds so that you get a double tracked guitar sound, even though it's a live performance with a single guitar. And I was like, oh, I never even considered, you know, how to do all that manipulation in post. It's a lot of work, but it taught me a lot, actually, because I really, really tried to rescue every one of those tracks. And the band wasn't impressed, but I was learning a lot. So,
so after describing,
I have a long history with this stuff.
Yeah, after describing that, would you call that like that's probably your worst flub or whatever? Someone that's kind of
that was a pretty bad one.
Yeah.
I mean, I was doing it for real cheap, so I also don't feel too bad about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was definitely a mistake that it was pretty much unrecoverable.
Audio is always going to be the Achilles heel of everyone.
It's way more important than visuals.
Oh, yeah.
And I hate saying that because I'm a way
Yep.
more visual person.
Yep.
And I've been in a band or two, but as a visual camera person for most of my life, I care so much about the visuals, and the reality is no one else does.
Yep. Because
So,
you can get away
if
with
it's got
poor
great audio.
Yep. You can get away with poor
It's got great
video
audio
if
and
it's
bad
got
video,
great
you can do
audio.
it.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's insane. So as we're kind of wrapping up, it's been cool catching up with you since June, since we did the weddings, man.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can come out again, depending on what your schedule's like. That'd be cool. What do you plan on doing with the documentary? You planning on shopping it around? You want to sell it? You think it's gonna be like a film festival thing? Netflix? What do you?
So I looked around for film festivals. I mean, I haven't even considered Netflix. But
I mean, Netflix buys everything, man. It's always a possibility.
Man, maybe I should check that out.
Yeah, I don't
Join
know.
the
I
pitch.
don't know how you would get a hold of anybody or whatever, but
Yeah.
maybe you need to get into a film festival first. See, that's probably how you're going to get seen, is if you get in a film festival. But shopping it that way, Amazon. There's so much money out there.
I have seen some really mediocre films on Netflix that makes me think I could do it.
Right? Especially the documentaries too. And yours is a pretty quick watch. I think you got it down to like 45 minutes after we basically guilted you into it.
No, you guys watching it and giving me feedback was so helpful. You and Brenton.
Yeah,
that changed everything.
That was an experience that night. I don't get to do that too often. Talk with people that understand things like I do, and I learned a lot from listening to Brenton and you, and that was great.
Yeah. To have feedback from people who already know how to make films and videos is invaluable. I send a lot of my rough cuts out to people and just say, what do you hate? What do you like? And give me your first thoughts. I want to know. And then that information like really informs I know if they're right or not. As one documentary guy told me when I helped him with his edit. He's like, just say whatever you think and I'll know if you have a good opinion or if your opinion sucks. But either way, it'll make me do something.
Yeah.
I've watched this 1,000 times. I can't make any more objective decisions.
Yeah, you get desensitized to it quickly. I find that with my wedding films too. I'll have my wife watch it and she'll go, "Why is her hand on her blah 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 or whatever?" And I go, "Well, because it's a great shot and I spent 20 minutes setting it up." She's like, "It just doesn't make sense. Get rid of it." And you go, "No, but it's such a good you just got to get that mindset away, and take it for what it is."
One thing I've learned on this doc is if it's hard to make it work, doesn't belong in the doc. Like it should be an easy insertion. It should be an easy edit.
Yeah.
And so many times I'll work for like an hour to make this like 30 seconds better, and it's still mediocre or bad or just okay. And my friends are like, "No, you should get rid of all that." And when you guys gave me feedback, you're like,
"Dude,
get rid of that. Oh, that sucks.
We
It
spent
was not the whole song. Get rid of it."
We spent almost 2 hours watching that, and then you're like, "Oh yeah, there's this like 7-minute portion that I completely took out. You guys want to watch that?" And I was like, "Oh man, I gotta go home." But all right, put it on. And then you put it on, and we're like, "Why isn't this in here? Why isn't it in there? It's like this best 7-minute edit that you have through the whole film. It should be in there."
There's a lot of rough stuff in that 2 hours. I'm glad it's 40 minutes.
Yeah. No. It was about an hour, I think. But
Was it? Okay.
we kept stopping it, It took like 2 hours to get through. Yeah. So, but yeah, anyway, man, thanks for being on my podcast. I'm kind of starting it up for 2019. It's more of my hobby. Me and Brandon are kind of trying to keep it wedding focused, but I want to do a little like tangent kind of thing, like talking to someone that's film related, but understands the film industry, and I want to learn more about that, because weddings are great, but it just kind of gets to a point where I want to branch out and really challenge myself in doing something else. Commercial work is
Yeah.
great too, but like we were kind of talking, I want a passion project of my own, and it's just hard to find that time. So I'm just kind of taking on the podcast as one of my passion projects. So
That's great. And I think audio is a lot easier to work with than video, especially if you don't have to edit it like this.
and I don't
Free
have to look
form
at
and
my
kinda
my
long
face
format.
either. That's
But
So-
yeah, if you want to do a passion project in the home region, Antigo, Wausau area, I'm interested. I'm sure Brenton would be interested too if it was well planned.
yeah. I just
Here and
needed an
there.
idea. I mean, I've kind of been kicking around. What's that?
I was just laughing at you needing an idea.
Yeah, I just need an idea.
That's-
Been kicking around like doing the kettlebell kind of thing.
I still think the kettlebell project is a really cool idea.
Yeah.
Because kettlebell, there's nothing like it. And for a
No.
while, all the Wausau snowboarders, they're very proud of their Rib Mountain heritage, but they were coming up to kettlebell because
Yeah.
they thought it was really cool. And it's still costs less than $5 to go skiing for the day.
I think it's $5
It's unheard
now.
of.
I think it's $5
Yeah,
if you're not
okay.
a student, and it's like $2 or $3 or something like that. I don't know, but it's unheard
It's
of.
amazing.
They got a cool new chalet that they built a couple years ago.
And there's cross country, alpine skiing,
Yeah,
snowboarding, everything right there.
and that's a whole.
And
other,
it's access to the hills. I mean, you can ride out there, snowmobile if you wanted to as well,
Yeah.
or just
that's a
walk,
whole
snowshoe. I mean,
other. It's a whole other podcast. I could go on about that
Yeah.
forever, man.
But yeah, I mean, there's so many other things you could do. Even I was thinking the museum in Antigo is so interesting. Everyone donated all that stuff from the 1800s
Yeah,
and on.
yeah, that's a cool idea too.
There's a lot of cool things or maybe the downfall of the downtown.
You know what?
That was
I was thinking that as well. Like, the kettlebell thing, and then something about the downtown. Just
If I give you
Yeah.
any advice, it would be keep them real short.
Yeah.
Just do it.
yeah,
Because
just little short films.
even this music
2,
video
3,
thing,
4
I spent over a month and a half editing this music thing
Yeah,
full time.
yeah.
That's a lot. And
I got-
if you did a 5-minute project, you could get a couple
Yo.
days into it and be
Yeah.
pretty happy, I think.
Yeah, if you ever come back, man, just let me know.
Yeah, cool.
All right, so
Well, thanks for having me on the podcast.
yeah, no problem. All Scott's links will be in the show notes. Do you have a website, anything like that you want to promote?
I will give you the URLs. I don't have
Don't know
anything
off the top of your head?
specific. I mean, the latest project I'm doing we haven't even mentioned, or I guess you mentioned it once, is the XJW project, and it's xjwdoc.com, and that's about people leaving religion. So that's my passion project, and I just had an experience that's kind of reinvigorating my creativity there. So it's about people leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yo,
So if you're interested in that topic, you can check that URL out. But
Yeah.
there's a link that shows kind of all access to my older sports videos and
I think
micro docs and stuff.
I think if you're available, maybe a little down the road, we should do another podcast about that project, because I'm fairly interested
I'd
in
love
that
to.
as well. I'd like to hear about that. But yeah, it's been about almost an hour, so I'm really happy to reconnect with you, man, and we'll stay in touch.
Yeah, sounds great, Scott.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks for listening, everybody. So after we finished the podcast, Scott and I were still talking on the phone, and we were talking about old things and catching up because we're old friends. And I got to thinking, why don't we put one of the songs from the docs at the end of the podcast? So just stay tuned at the end of the podcast here, and you'll be able to listen to one of the songs that Scott's supplying me.